Mike Damergis here with Professor Jeanne Zaino of Political Science and Media Studies here at Iona College. Good afternoon, Dr. Zaino.
Good afternoon.
So, an interesting article caught my eye over the weekend, and I'm sure a lot of professors as well were having their morning coffee, reading the Sunday New York Times, and maybe coughed up their bagel and spit out their coffee as Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin, who's kind of taking aim at universities, in particular University of Wisconsin, and saying maybe the government should be involved in curriculum and these tenured professors and being protected. Maybe that's something we should kind of look at.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. I had several emails about that from people Sunday morning as they looked at the front page of the New York Times and found that Scott Walker had turned his attention from public schools, where he's been very active, and was turning his attention to the university system in Wisconsin, which is, one of the nation's best university systems. And he and the Republicans in the state legislature are looking at changing several things there, including tenure, as you mentioned, and including curriculum, and including the notion of shared governance. And so I think it's something that a lot of people, certainly in higher education, have been talking about, because if this was to go through, it certainly would have ramifications not just in Wisconsin, but across the country. And let's not forget, Scott Walker is also a potential candidate for the 2016 presidential election. And in fact, one of the leading candidates, even though he hasn't announced yet. If he does announce, he certainly has a lot of support there. So the ramifications and the ripple effect of something like this, if it goes into effect, could be huge.
He's looking at putting together, I guess, a dream team of about 18 people that would oversee this. What would be the qualifications of these people? And to me, it's just adding a lot of red tape. And he's looking to save money. It seems like something like this would cost money because there'd be so much more involved.
Yeah, so the qualifications, as we understand it, would be simply being appointed, at least 16 of the members of the board being appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate. So beyond that, the qualifications, we assume, would be that the governor has decided that you are worthy of sitting on this board, and you get the confirmation from the Senate. And the argument that the Republicans have been making, you're absolutely right, is this is fiscal, this is strategic, this is a way to hold down costs, this is a way to streamline education. And so, we have to wait and see if they put it into effect, if that is the outcome, or, as you mentioned, if they are adding another level of red tape. But, I think that that's part of the problem we have here, or we need to talk more about, is the fact that higher education is increasingly looked at like a business, and it's not a business. And so, if you simply look at it from a corporate standpoint, you can make these claims that if we do X, Y, and Z, you can streamline the educational system. But of course, the customers, quote unquote, in this argument would be the students, and they're not customers. They are people who need to learn, and they are people who go for an education. And if you treat them as consumers, you change what higher education in this country has always been. So, I think that's part of the larger conversation that needs to be had. And, unfortunately, we haven't been able to have that conversation because you have people like Scott Walker and others who have raised this as kind of a populist notion. So they're selling this as, why do people need tenure? Nobody has a guaranteed job for life. This shouldn't be the way it is. And, that is an argument that, if you look at the polls actually in Wisconsin, is resonating with people. But I think we have to take a step back again and look and see who is served by this. What is the goal of this? And is this something that's in the best interest of really the people who matter, which are the students, and in a public education system, the public? And I think we haven't gotten to those answers yet. And quite frankly, I think we as faculty across the country bear a lot of responsibility for that, because we haven't been talking enough or making a concerted effort enough to talk about the value of all of these things: shared governance, our role in curriculum, the importance of tenure in an academic setting. I mean, these are all things that we have to talk to people about and explain why they're important, and how it would be a disservice to education across the country, and certainly our students and the public, to strip any system of those.
Your initial reaction, something like this, for the most part, teachers and even college professors do not get paid as they do in the mainstream professional area when you compare their education. Something like this would certainly dissuade future generations of people that want to go work in academics away from something like this, because there is that the appeal of being tenured.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a huge fear that's been raised. So, for instance, if this does occur in Wisconsin, does the Wisconsin system have trouble attracting faculty, attracting young, really smart, really ambitious faculty, really good researchers and good teachers? That's certainly a huge concern. You're absolutely right. Nobody is going into academia to make a lot of money, but you're going into it for other reasons. And certainly one of the benefits of that is tenure. But again, I think we also have to look at where tenure comes from historically and why it's important not just to faculty and not just as kind of a perk, which it's often seen as, but why it is such an important aspect of education, and particularly public education in our system and in our country. And that has little to do with the perks it gives to faculty, but with the freedom it allows faculty to have broad discussions that challenge conventional norms, to say things to their students, to do research in areas that, otherwise they may not be able to do. And these are all important aspects of, a liberal arts education. And so to strip that is not only stripping a perk, which I'm less interested in, than it is of changing the way our education system works and changing the nature of public education in this country. And that's where I think the discussion has to be had, because if we look at it as just a perk, which it is, it's a great perk, it is not what it was intended to be. And that, I think, does allow people like Scott Walker to go out there and say, look at, this is something that you don't enjoy if you're a mailman. This is something you don't enjoy if you're, working at a convenience store. This is something most workers in this country don't enjoy. Why should you? And I think they are right to ask that question. And I think we have to be prepared to answer why it's important to our students and the public.
Moving from the issue of tenure, what about curriculum? This is something interesting, and this is where I really think the red tape could certainly put in a lot of time and cost the states a lot of money when you start really examining the curriculum. What are your initial thoughts on that as a professor?
Well, I think this is the really dangerous component, the really dangerous area. And several of the people I've been talking to have said, setting tenure aside, which is one thing, this issue of the control over the curriculum, taking that away from a kind of shared governance where it's something that faculty have an input on and it's something that the administration certainly speaks to, and you collaborate in terms of, faculty obviously guiding the substantive components of that, hopefully. I think that is a real danger here. Obviously, one of my friends said, I don't go walk on a plane and pretend that I can just fly it. These are people who are trained in their specific disciplines. These are people who have thought an awful lot about these issues. And this is an area in which they want to contribute to the public discussion and also give students the knowledge that they need to move forward. You have to have people trained in particular areas have a say on what that curriculum is. And I think the real danger, speaking of the corporate end of things, is if you have a program that is not enrolling at the numbers that it should be. Are those programs going to be threatened? Those programs which may be intrinsically important, say, a program like, and I'm not picking on it, but philosophy or history or any of the humanities, the social sciences, or whatever it is, doesn't enroll it at such a large number. Are those programs stripped because of the lack of or inability to be fiscally responsible, even though they are intrinsically important to a liberal arts education? And I think that's where the faculty's voice really matters, because the faculty can come in and say, not dictate obviously, but come in and have a discussion and some role in saying that if you truly want to have a broad liberal arts education, you need to be schooled and educated in these particular areas. And, we cannot, forego those just because they are not enrolling to the degree. And that's just one example. So I think the curriculum component is really the crux of the matter, because if there's anything faculty really do, it is take an active role in the curriculum construction, and then, looking at that curriculum periodically, revising it periodically, and doing that in a way that is in keeping with the changes in their disciplines and their respective disciplines. And if that's stripped away from faculty and given to a committee of some sort, I think that's the real danger and the real concern here.
Okay, she's Dr. Jeanne Zaino, professor of media studies, political media studies here at Iona College. Never ever at a loss for words. Thank you again. Your thoughts were very insightful, and I'm sure Socrates, if he was around today, would be scratching his head.
Thank you, Mike.
For Iona College, I'm Mike Damergis.